What's up, Pungios? Andy with Allgamesplayed, gonna share with you guys another video. I've been making a lot of videos. This one's gonna be not really an unboxing, not really a how-to, but something that's really cool. So this is a replacement housing shell for the good old Nintendo Switch Pro Controller. Pro Controller is pretty plain, pretty bland. And we're going to spruce it up by adding some colored keys, by changing the grips here and the actual shell itself. It's somewhat transparent, translucent, opaque, and we're going to lighten it up with an Eevee theme. Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu came out. These are the button colors, which you'll see me install. This is the new shell. It's much more opaque. And then each one of the grips are themed of the Pokemon. This one's Eevee and this one's Pikachu. So I'm really excited to get this started, and maybe this will be a how-to, maybe this will be a hyperlapse, I don't know, but we'll see. Let's jump into it. The first thing I like to do is lay out all my items just to take inventory of what I've got. You got the 2 clamshells, the 2 grips, and the buttons. I'm pretty sure there's 14 screws. The bottom of both grips, there's 2 longest screws. Once you've unscrewed that, there's 4 silver screws, 2 on each grip. 2 that are closer to the connectivity place and 2 on the outside. Once you've gotten these unscrewed, go ahead and take the back plate off. I don't know the exact specification for the Phillips head screwdriver, but it's a screwdriver that you use for glasses. It's really small. Once you take that back plate off, feel free to take the battery out. It's just a good idea to make sure there's no battery or energy going on when you're messing with the innards. Once you take that off, there are 5 subsequent screws, 2 closest to the bumper, 2 on the outside perimeter towards the middle, and then 1 just right next to the connectivity lights. I started from the top right and then kind of circled my way down, got to the connectivity lights, and then I circled back up to the middle and then to the bumpers. I found that the bumpers were the hardest because they were deepest, but once you get that in, you can clamshell it out and see the 2 ribbons that are connected. Then there are 3 screws that connect to the circuit board. That one that is right next to the ribbon, there's 1 on and above the left stick, and then there's 1 in the center. Then there's a tiny black ribbon that connects the circuit board to the buttons. This is the amiibo sensor. This was the most difficult part because I didn't realize that you could take the ribbons off, and I made the mistake of pulling off the ribbons. Once you get it unlatched, feel free to swap out the buttons. It's pretty straightforward. Each button has its own individual slot with its own individual shape, so it's just like an easy puzzle piece. Don't worry about taking off the analog sticks. The minus button and the capture button are connected. They have a little sponge thing that connects it. The home button and the plus button have their own dedicated little sponge things. I don't know what they're called. The home button's a little tricky. It is white instead of gray, whereas the other ones are black. Okay, so once you've got the buttons in, you'll want to connect the circuit board back in with the shoulder and bumper buttons. This can be hard pressed into it. As you can see here, this is where the black ribbon was detached from that little tiny socket. It can be placed back on there. Once you get that put back on, you go ahead and add those 3 screws back onto the circuit board. And there they are. Each button is being pressed with no problem. The first thing you want to do is unlatch the socket. This can be done by lifting up the black piece that is perpendicular to its socket. Once you do that, You can go to do the same thing to the white ribbon. You just have to lift up the latch, place the blue side down, insert it. Once it doesn't move further, feel free to close it and go from there. Now, I know what you're seeing right now doesn't correlate with what I'm saying, just because the footage that I had for that portion was spoiled because my head was in front of the camera. But this next part is me speeding up the process of putting the screws back. Remember, there are 3 on the circuit board. Once you get the circuit board and the ribbons attached, there's 5, and then 4, and then 2. And there you go. So there you have it. Here it is in all its glory, the finished product. Close-up shot here, you can see the Pikachu and Pokeball and Eevees. I actually think it's Pichu instead of Eevee. Other than that, you've got a really sleek grip. And then finally on the back, you've got the same Pikachu and Pichu decals. And honestly, this will only set you back about 20 bucks. It's got the multicolored buttons that are like the PAL version or the Super Famicom version. I think it's not too bad. There's a few things to note. The tapped holes that you unscrew and screw the screws into, they're terrible. So make sure you don't mess up and have to rescrew or screw it in, because you're going to lose the threading, because it's literally plastic, metal on plastic. And so I actually ended up with 1 spare screw because one of the holes or one of the threads was just, it was gone, and so it slipped out when I was putting it together. Also, don't forget, before you get to the silver screws, make sure you put the battery in. I made that big mistake. Other than that, I think it looks really good. I tested it. I'm not going to test it on screen on the streamer here, but every button's working, all the connections. The last thing is just the charging that I didn't check, and I'll check that in a minute, but the charging does work. We've got the sync buttons going, you can see. With that being said, guys, thanks so much for watching this. Andy with Allgamesplayed signing out.